Hello and welcome once again to Answering Atheism, brought to you by your good friends here at abitoforange.com. As we are answering atheism, we have also begun to answer the question, what proof is there that God does exist? Well, here's another one. Life on Earth. But beyond the information in the DNA, cells are full of information because they are collections of machines built and driven by information. Cells are amazing collections of machinery, and there are lots of examples that can be given, but here's three very simple and very common ones. The first, on the far left there, is a machine whose job it is to deliver DNA. It is what we consider a virus. Now, there's multiple kinds of viruses. This one, it very clearly is a well-engineered machine whose job it is to create a landing, a stabilized landing platform to drill through the surface below, and then to interject DNA into the awaiting cell. It is very clearly a machine, the kind of complex machine which could not have come about without an intelligent designer. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. How is he using viruses as an example of God's good design? Viruses do nothing but cause disease and suffering. Well, this is not actually true. Viruses vary considerably in their ability to cause disease. Many viruses are not associated with any disease at all. Some may cause symptoms that are so mild they go undetected. Some, like the HIV virus that causes AIDS in people, appear to have come from another species where they do not cause disease. What we're learning about viruses is the same thing we're learning about bacteria. That while we think of them primarily as causing disease, the fact is the vast majority of them don't cause disease, and they actually serve tremendously beneficial and useful functions. Bacteriophages, or phages for short, are viruses that infect bacteria. The phages invade bacteria and reproduce in their host until their hind numbers eventually rupture and kill the bacteria. When ocean bacteria are ruptured, they release tons of carbon and nitrogen so other living organisms can use them, or these nutrients are stored in mud deposits for later use. Other phages have been discovered to aid in human health. The famous Ganges River in India has long been known to cure diseases like cholera, but the reason was a mystery. Not long ago, the river was shown to contain a lot of phages that kill cholera-causing bacteria. Just recently also, scientists discovered phages that naturally exist in the human body, where they help control the number of bacteria and may even kill bacteria that make us sick. Some doctors are now considering using phages instead of antibiotics to kill bacteria in the human body. This is known as phage therapy. And so presently some viruses, but clearly not the majority, do cause disease. However, it's not legitimate to look at the corruption of the design and say therefore there was no designer, or therefore the original must have been meant to be harmful. Everything we're learning about it seems to indicate that the original design was good and that the intent of the original design was to be beneficial. The machine in the middle is called ATP synthase. It's basically like a hydroelectric dam.
ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, is the energy currency of the cell. ATP is produced by a tiny molecular rotary motor, rotating at up to 7,000 RPM. These are so small that 100,000 would fit side by side in a millimeter. A current of protons drives the motor, unlike man-made electric motors which use electrons. This portion of the enzyme is where adenosine diphosphate is combined with a phosphate ion in the presence of a catalyst to produce ATP, which is then released, making way for the next cycle. A top view of the enzyme shows the sequential operation. Almost every biochemical process in your body requires ATP. Such a nanomachine exhibits all the characteristics of super-intelligent design. ATP is vital for life, and many of these motors were needed before the first living cell could exist. An evolutionary impossibility.
On the far right, we have the flagellum. This is the kind of thing that propels bacteria forward, and it is essentially a rotary motor with a whip on it. This is an energy-driven motor. It's not a metaphor, it's literally a motor. Look into the structure and function of this. It is amazingly complicated and very similar to some things that we have built. So the argument from design is very simple. All living things are so complex they demand a brilliant designer. And this is not a God of the gaps argument. We are not looking at things and saying, well, we don't understand how they work, so they must be too complicated to come about naturally. The more we know about genetics and cellular biology, the more that we know there's no possible way, no natural way, for these things to create themselves or to be created without the purposeful intervention of an intelligence. The motor on the left, clearly created by human beings. No sane person would look at the motor on the left and say, well, it's made out of metals, which are natural, and given enough time and enough geological processes, this could come about with no intelligent intervention. Clearly, it shows the hallmarks of design. And when you look at the world of living cells, they show at least that much complexity, usually far more. Because of what we know about genetics, about biology, and because of what we know about statistics, we can say mathematically that the probability of any of these individual pieces, let alone entire cells, coming together without an intelligence is just impossible. So the question we have to ask is, where did all of this information come from? Where did all the information in the DNA, all the structural complexity of the machines that run the cell, where did it come from? Either it's necessary, the thing in question could not have been a different way, but even the simplest examination of DNA and the machines that run the cell will tell us that they could have been a different way. In fact, if they are slightly different, they break down, they stop functioning. This is why mutations that cause little differences in DNA cause disease and ultimately death. What about 2, natural? Is there any natural process that could take any starting initial conditions and create even the simplest cell? And the answer is no. There are no natural processes that create complex machines or create information systems. Natural processes always degrade them, they break them down. Entropy means that usable energy gradually becomes unusable. Complexity becomes chaos. Things break down, they don't build up. Furthermore, the building blocks of every cell, proteins, amino acids, nucleotides, DNA, RNA, etc., do not form in nature. They are only found in living things, which is why living things have to come from pre-existing living things. But even if proteins, amino acids, nucleotides, DNA could form naturally, you would still have to take all of those different chemical components and arrange them in these specific and complicated ways that create the machinery of the cell and the information that codes for it, which makes it a problem so insurmountable that there is no sane, rational way to defend the idea that even the simplest cell could come about by accident. They are clearly the result of a brilliant designer. So what proves the existence of God? Well, in short, life, the universe, and everything. So I hope this look at the argument from design has helped clear up why atheism is ridiculous. Thanks for joining us here at abitoforange.com. We'll see you next time. Oh, and remember, Jesus loves you.